What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 386 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. And for the first time in a while, the show is going up when it should be, at a decent time on a Wednesday. Last week it went up super late, right before midnight on the East Coast here on a Wednesday. I think the two prior weeks it went up on early Thursday. So there's still a lot I have to catch up on, because coming out of WrestleMania was probably the busiest I've ever been. And all good types of busy too, nothing to complain about, but there's a lot of shit I still have to catch up on, watch, review, record. All of that will be up here on the channel and on WrestleRant.com. I would say probably by the end of the month, because there's still so much I have to do. So just keep an eye out for all of it. I should have everything done. And I say by the end of the month, but the end of the month is like in a week and a half from now. The end of April is like next Friday, so I'm hoping to have it done by then, so we'll see. But it's been a very exciting, busy time right now. A lot of shit going on. A couple of cheap plugs to throw at you before we get started here with the questions. One, if you have not yet checked out last week's episode, definitely do so. Alexis joined me at the last minute to answer your questions. I didn't advertise that in advance, or even when I was promoting the show. There was just a lot going on, I forgot. But she was indeed on the show last week, and she was great. So check out that episode, 385, to hear Alexis's thoughts on all of your questions. And then tomorrow here on the channel, if you're not already subscribed, I say this every single week, you should be. You absolutely should be. You're not going to want to miss this. Because going up tomorrow, I believe, unless something changes, at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, is my exclusive interview with the one, the only, the man, the meme, the legend himself, John Cena, going up tomorrow morning. We had a great 15-minute conversation talking all things Wipeout, WWE, WrestleMania. It was recorded, I think, 2 weeks ago. I mean, it feels like it was a month ago at this point with everything that's gone on since then. But we talked 2 weeks ago, right before WrestleMania, and it's going up tomorrow. My interview with CM Punk went up last week. Never thought I'd be saying that, but it did. You can check out my conversation with the voice of the voiceless last week here on the channel from last Friday. Cena is going up tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. It should be going up first thing tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. You're going to want to be able to see it, pun intended. So check that out as well. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So we'll get started here first with Grandmaster Chris, who sent this in last week, right after the episode went up. This is a good question from YouTube, by the way. If you were to trim Mania 32 through 35 to 4 hours instead of 5, what matches would you cut or cut the time for? That's a great question. So I got all the WrestleManias pulled up here on Wikipedia, starting with 32. Looking at this card, first of all, I've always maintained the pre-show does not need to be fucking 2 hours long. That doesn't count towards the total run time, because you're saying the actual Manias themselves, not even including the pre-show, was 5 hours. 32 through 35 was at least 5 hours from 7 p.m. Eastern, and they all ended at around midnight, or close to midnight. So what I would do with 32, I would take Kalisto and Ryback completely off the card. There was really no reason for that match to happen. You can probably say the same thing about the Usos and the Dudley Boys, but that was the match I was actually excited for. First time ever, the Dudley Boys back at WrestleMania. I was fine with that being on the card. I was totally fine with that being on the card on the kickoff show. There was nothing at stake, so I was fine with that match. Kalisto and Ryback was literally thrown together at the last minute, and I like Kalisto as champion. Ryback was on his way out. There was really no reason to do that match on that show. You could have just easily saved it for the Extreme Rules show or whatever the hell it was a month later at Payback when they did the match again anyway, or the night after WrestleMania, whatever. But I thought this was a good match that they could have taken off. So take Kalisto and Ryback off the card, and then move the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal to the pre-show instead. Because other than the first time they held it, it took place on the pre-show every year anyway. And I understand the only reason they did it on the main card at 32 was because they had Shaq involved. DDP came back. Baron Corbin won the whole thing, debuting and winning the whole thing. It was a cool Mania moment for him. You could have just done it on the pre-show. So that's 10 minutes saved right there. The Rock-Cena segment was a complete waste of time. You got Cena back. The Wyatt family looked like losers. Anyone remember Eater of Hot Pockets and how stupid that was? If you still want to do that, you can just trim the whole segment by like 10 minutes. I enjoyed The Rock's promo, but it could have been a lot quicker and simpler and easier than what they did here. So that whole segment was not good to me. So you can either cut that all together or just trim down the time on that segment. Taker and Shane had no business being 30 minutes, honestly. I mean, that could have been 15 minutes at most. Roman Reigns and Triple H would have been better 10 minutes less. I mean, we're probably going under 4 hours here, but this is what I would do. And then put League of Nations versus New Day on the kickoff show. New Day belonged at WrestleMania after the great year they had leading up to that. But I would just put it on the pre-show because that match was really nothing notable. Yeah, you had Stone Cold come out, but you could have found another part of the show to have Stone Cold come out and do what he did. So I'd put that on the pre-show. I would put the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal on the pre-show, cut the time for the Rock segment, cut the time for the main event, and cut the time for Taker and Shane. That probably would make it a 3-hour show, to be honest, but I really was not a fan of 32. I think we talked about this with Brandon. He was talking about, 32 is not that bad of a show. It might have been another WrestleMania, but 32 really was just... I remember ending that show with that show ending and thinking to myself, wow, that was very underwhelming for how much they built up that show. And I was looking forward to it too, and it just wasn't very good compared to the other WrestleManias that preceded it. So Mania 33, I was there for that one. What would I cut from the show or make shorter? That's a good question. Rollins and Triple H, I don't think needed to be 24 minutes, honestly. Roman and Taker, with the stage or the shape that Taker was in at that point, at that stage of his career, did not need to be 23 minutes. That could have been also a lot shorter. I mean, in retrospect, you could have cut out the Cena, Nikki Bella, Miz and Maurice match, because the Cena, Nikki Bella engagement obviously never came to fruition. So you could have cut that. Man, 33 is a lot harder, because I liked a lot more of these matches than I did at 32. I mean, obviously I would cut Orton and Wyatt, but that was just complete shit. But that was also for the WWE Championship. I don't know. This one's a lot tougher, to be honest with you. I would probably move the six-pack challenge for the SmackDown Women's Championship to the pre-show. And then, do you cut Dean Ambrose and Baron Corbin? I mean, the match wasn't anything notable, but Ambrose belonged in the show. I don't know. This one's a lot tougher. This one is a lot tougher to do. Was there any segments on that show that just dragged on for a while? I know they had the New Day come out a couple of times. That could have been shortened. I don't know why this is a 5-hour show. I mean, there were a lot of matches, but I mean, that must be what it is, because I don't know why else the show would be 5 hours. That's crazy. I know the Taker thing at the end lasted a long time. I would probably cut the time for Roman and Taker. I would cut the time for... Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins and Triple H could have been a little bit shorter too. And then probably move just the SmackDown Women's Championship match to the pre-show. I would not have cut Aries and Neville. That was one of the best matches in the whole show. I would have left that. I would have put that in the main card, to be honest with you, but if it was the first match in the pre-show, that's fine. The crowd was still hot. That was cool. I would probably just cut Ambrose and Corbin and then put the SmackDown Women's Championship match in the pre-show instead. And that saves you a lot of time, because that match was 16 minutes. That's got to be inaccurate. I thought that match was like fucking 5 minutes. There's no way that SmackDown Women's title match was 16 minutes. It can't be. If it was, I would just move that right to the pre-show. I would just probably put 4 matches on the pre-show instead, because I like Naomi getting her moment, but the match wasn't that incredible. I mean, the Raw Women's Championship match wasn't that great either. It was just, it was good, but, it featured bigger names than the SmackDown Women's Championship match did. Let's see. Let's go to WrestleMania 34. This was a long one as well. Holy shit, 14 matches including the pre-show. I would cut the U.S. Championship match. That was just a complete waste of time. 10 minutes down the drain right there. I would cut that from the show almost immediately. I would cut, the SmackDown Tag Team title match. I mean, it was 5 minutes. I mean, I don't know. It was fun while it lasted, but it's like, I hate to give the shaft. I mean, okay, let's be honest here. The Strowman, Nicholas, Cesaro, Sheamus thing was a complete waste, too. It was a 4-minute match, but the build-up with Strowman finding a partner was just, by that point in the show, was a complete drag. So just get rid of that. Get rid of the United States Championship match. And then as far as match times, I don't know. Everything else kind of went the appropriate amount of time. I don't know. But yeah, I would probably cut the U.S. Championship match, and I would cut I would cut the Raw Tag Team title match to make it a 12-match show. If I had to cut something else, I mean, Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss, they had a good story, but compared to all the other matches on the show, it really did not need to happen. So I'd probably move that either to the pre-show or just off the show completely, because I just didn't really care about the match itself. We get to WrestleMania 35, another WrestleMania I was at. Let's see here. And this is the last one here before we move on to the next question. Holy shit, 16 matches, including the pre-show. Holy fuck, I forgot how long the show was. I actually just rewatched it recently with Alexis. It was 5 hours and 20 minutes to be exact. Holy shit. So what would I change from this show? Batista Triple H was a long-ass match. I would probably cut off at least 10 minutes from that. It did not need to be 25 minutes, I'm sorry. That did not need to be 25 minutes. Balor and Lashley was short and sweet, but you could have cut that out. That was not a WrestleMania-worthy match. Joe and Mysterio, hey, if you're going to cut the Intercontinental Championship, cut the U.S. Championship too. I hate that I'm saying this, but like, these matches did not need to happen. I would cut the Women's Tag Team title match too. The thing with that is that it was the first, I don't know. If you really want to get it under 4 hours, because this was a long show, you got to cut more than 2 matches. So I would cut Balor, Lashley, Joe and Mysterio, even though it was like a minute long. The Women's Tag Team title match was the first time the tag titles for the women had ever been defended at WrestleMania. So that's why it's hard to cut it. But it wasn't that great of a match where it's like, oh, it absolutely needed to happen. It really didn't. So I would either move it to the kickoff show or just cut it completely. And then the SmackDown Tag Team title match too. I enjoyed it for what it was, but there was like zero story there. It was literally just a case of getting everyone on the card. So I would cut the SmackDown Fatal 4-Way Tag Team title match too. And that's about it. I mean, all the other matches were either fine. I mean, like Corbin and Angle was not that great, but no, it was 6 minutes. The main event could have been a little bit shorter, and it probably would have been a little bit better. I don't know. Everything else was kind of exactly what it needed to be. Styles and Orton maybe could have cut out a couple of minutes from that. You could have cut out the dance break, which was a complete waste of time at that point in the show. I completely forgot about that, but that happened later on in the show too. You could have cut that out. You could have cut out maybe the Alexa Bliss Hogan segment to start off the show. I'm sure not a lot of people would complain about that being removed from the show. So that's probably what I would do to WrestleMania 35 as well. We move to the next question here from Brandon A. He said, "What's up, GSM? I still plan on making my WrestleMania 14 argument, but I don't have the time this week, so I will pivot." His actual question is, WrestleMania 37 was largely booked perfectly, and we got pretty much all the outcomes we wanted. I realized after thinking about it further, most of the people that have been doing well over the last few years have been people we as fans want to see do well. However, we have complained endlessly about the lack of booking when it comes to people like Ricochet, Aleister Black, Andrade, when he was still in the company, Keith Lee, Mustafa Ali, etc. My question, if every single one of them was actually featured and booked well, whose spot are they taking right now? Because most of the people getting TV time right now are people we want to see. The only champions we have had in recent memory that the fans aren't behind are really Shayna and Nia, and some people are still rooting for Shayna. I mean, I'm among them as well. If those talents that are underutilized are actually used, somebody else has to get sacrificed. Who? Not really, I don't think. I'm not saying that everyone, not everyone that you mentioned, you make a great point. I agree with you and I disagree with you, which is usually, I think, the case for your questions. And I think Brandon always sends in great questions, a lot of thought-provoking questions, and this is one of them. Per usual, I agree and I disagree. I agree in that I think people don't appreciate enough. I mean, listen, Raw is terrible right now. But the thing is that it's crazy because you look back like 5, 6, 7 years ago, Raw was a little bit better probably. It was probably a little bit better, but we had the same few faces on fucking top all the time. John Cena, Randy Orton, Triple H was champion for a time, the goddamn Authority. Like, I'm honestly not really sure what the worst period of Raw is between this and, like, the Authority era from 2013 through 2015, which was god-awful. God-awful. I think the problem is now is that compared to then, there are so many more talents that we want to see. A majority of the people on the roster from NXT compared to 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was only a handful. So we only really wanted to see Bray Wyatt on the show, We only really wanted to see Dolph Ziggler at that point on the show because he was still really popular and whatnot. And people wanted to see him succeed. Nowadays, the entire roster is extremely talented. It's not just one or two or three or four or five people. It's like almost everyone on the show. So yeah, some people are being featured, and I agree. I think we should appreciate the fact that McIntyre's gotten a great push over the last year. Roman Reigns is the hottest thing going in the entire company. He's gotten a great push. Several other people, Cruz and Big E, I think are doing great things right now. You can't put a championship on everyone. Unless you want to introduce 20 different titles, which I don't think you should do, and even right now I think WWE has too many championships. But I think the brand split helps with that, and featuring more people. Because if you only had one brand, like Raw and SmackDown were like the Super Show or the Wild Card rule like it was 2 years ago, you have a lot less people getting featured because you see the same faces on Raw and SmackDown every fucking week. I hated the Wild Card rule. I hated the Raw Super Show years ago. I think the brand split is a godsend. It really is, because I think it allows more people to get featured. Now, the problem is this. You mentioned, whose spot are they taking? They don't have to take anyone's spot. You can create new spots. With Raw this week, it was not a good show. It was better than last week, but that says absolutely nothing, because that show was god-awful. The post-WrestleMania Raw was terrible. This week's Raw, I noticed multiple things. You have a 3-hour show. NXT is a 2-hour show. Not everyone has to be featured every single week, but I feel like in NXT, even in Dynamite to a certain extent, they're signing a lot of people. But even in AEW, a lot of people mean something. They have a story, they have a character. There's only a few people that get lost in the shuffle. Even someone like Miro, who I think they could be doing more with, has still been featured fairly regularly since he showed up in the company. We have literally never seen several people on Raw for weeks, months. Black has not been used since October. How do you have a guy like Aleister Black and not use him whatsoever? It's crazy. I mean, with SmackDown, it's tougher because it's a 2-hour show. Raw is a 3-hour show. With Raw this week, you could have easily cut out Kofi Kingston and Elias and put in a Ricochet match. Who gives a shit about Elias and Jackson Riker at this point in time? I like Elias, but he's been so beyond creatively damaged, it's impossible to give a shit about the guy. So you could take that out. The segment setting up Priest and Miz for later on in the show. Why was that Miz TV segment even necessary? Why did that even happen? I love seeing Maurice, but she could have come out with Miz for the match with Priest later on in the show. Why was the promo with Asuka and Charlotte and Rhea necessary? It was fine, but you either could have condensed it or done something in the back. I'm not saying don't give these people promo time, but like that segment wasn't necessary. The McIntyre, I guess the opening segment made sense because they had to follow up from last week's events. Not the entire show doesn't have to be matches. But come on a 3-hour show, you can spare of all the fucking replays that we see on Raw and SmackDown, specifically on SmackDown last week. But Raw is terrible to replays too. Whenever I don't watch Raw live and I catch up like later on in the night, I can literally get through the show in like 2 hours. Probably like 90 minutes, to be honest with you. If I cut out all the entrances, the replays, the commercials, and all the other bullshit, and I'm not even talking about like the matches I don't care about. If I watch those, but cut out all the other crap, I can get through the show in like 90 minutes, which is terrible for a 3-hour show. You can use that. I don't feel that same way with NXT. NXT, there's not a lot of shit I'm cutting out if I'm catching up after the fact. I might be saving a half an hour on commercials and some entrances, maybe, but most of the time I'm watching everything on NXT because they have videos, they have vignettes and video packages and promos and hype packages, and very rarely do they waste time with replays. That's one thing they could easily cut out. And instead of a replay, you could do a 30-second to a minute to a 3-minute video package on Ricochet. Tell me what he's doing. What's next for him? What is his motivation? Same thing with an Andrade when he was there. The fact they couldn't use Andrade for as long as he was there, we haven't seen him since October. Obviously, he's gone now, but he was cleared for months before they finally let him go like a month or so ago. You could have used him. Keith Lee is different. You mentioned Keith Lee being underutilized. I think he has a health issue. I don't think it's a case of like them not using him. Keith Lee was fine. He wasn't booked amazingly well, but he got a handful of championship shots. He beat Randy Orton in his first pay-per-view match in the main roster. He doesn't feel as special as he once did, but he's had a lot of good matches. He's been booked decently well. I'm not really worried about him too much. Ali has just been, what the fuck? The fact you couldn't find anything for that guy to do for 7 months when he was gone from like December of 2019 through last summer, and he wasn't hurt, is just incredible to me. I mean, again, you have all these writers, and I don't even think the writers are the problem, to be honest with you, because they come up with all the ideas in the world, but if it doesn't appease Vince McMahon, then it doesn't matter. So, again, it's not a matter of like, oh, whose spot are they taking? It's not a matter of like, oh, this company is pushing the wrong people. I mean, sometimes they do. I always go back to this, but Jinder Mahal had no business being WWE champion in 2017. That reign could have easily gone to Shinsuke Nakamura or someone like that instead. Someone who was popular at the time that could have used the championship reign, not fucking Jinder Mahal, okay? That's one thing. The second thing is that it's just they have so much television time and they have so much content, they could easily figure out not something for everyone to do, but Angel Garza had his little thing going for a while when he was doing that, like, oh, I'll give you the rose shit, like those little videos, and it went nowhere. It went nowhere. That kept him busy. That was interesting. That kept me a little bit intrigued. I'm like, okay, what's next for this guy coming off the Andrade tag team split? And they've done nothing with him. He ended right back up on main event. I mean, it's not a matter of creating a spot. The spots are there. They're just not utilizing them. No one is in that spot. They're just empty spots. So while it is cool to see people like Bobby Lashley do well, because I'm sure I'd be complaining about Bobby Lashley being buried, and I have before, if he wasn't being used well right now because the guy is a star. But why break up the Hurt Business? Alexander and Benjamin, again, that was a spot they just vacated, and now it's empty. Why do that when they could all be together? Like, that's one dumb thing. Why split up tag teams? Tucker, there was no reason to listen. I'm not the biggest Tucker fan in the world, but Heavy Machinery was perfect as is. Why break them up? Mandy Rose and Otis had a good thing going. Why break it up? I know the storyline ran its course, but the Dana Brooke tag team is terrible. It's terrible. It's awful. They give these people bad storylines, bad characters, and they're all so creatively damaged that it's hard to care about a lot of these people. Ricochet has been so badly booked from either not being on TV or being on TV and losing all the time that it's just, I don't know. Some of the people like Ricochet, they're losing to people who don't always need the wins. Like Styles beating Ricochet, 5 times was not necessary. Styles would not have lost a lot if he lost to Ricochet, 1 or 2 times, When Ricochet never got the championship back, like Styles beat Alexander, for example, 5 times. One match would have been enough. But they did the match 5 times, and Alexander looked like a loser every single time because he lost every single time. I mean, they have the spots available. I think the funny thing is that AEW tries to shove everyone on their shows, and they have a 2-hour show, which I'm not a fan of. You don't need to have everyone in every fucking show. You don't need to have a brawl in every segment just to get the Dark Order on the show. The problem with WWE is that they have more time than AEW, but they're not doing anything with it. They're completely wasting it with just pointless shit. We're seeing the same people on the shows. Again, promos are fine. We need more promos, obviously, like good promos, not poorly scripted promos. And I'm not saying the shows are completely terrible, but Raw has been pretty bad now for a while. And they could be using some of the people that are sitting in the back doing absolutely nothing a little bit better than they are. Riddle, you just got to win over Randy Orton. That's worth acknowledging. That was a very good match. He picked up a big win. His character sucks. But Riddle, I think, in the ring is great. So it's not that they're doing everything wrong. It's that they could be doing a lot more with the roster they currently have. If you're adamant about signing all of these people, you got to use them. If not, let them go. Andrade is a perfect example. Why even bother having the guy employed? And thankfully they let him go. They heeded his request and let him go. Why even bother having him around if you're not going to use him? You know what I mean? It makes absolutely no sense. So I'm glad they let him go. I'm glad they set him free. I'm not saying they should set, Aleister Black free and Ricochet. You can't fire everyone, give everyone their release. But just use them. If you're going to have them on the show, then use them. I'm not saying Ricochet needs to be WWE champion, but he and Sheamus could have been a really fun feud over that United States Championship if Ricochet meant a shit. You know what I'm saying? If he meant a single shit, then that feud would have been great. But he doesn't mean anything, so that feud doesn't really mean anything at all. That's the problem. All right, we spent a lot of time on the YouTube questions, but they were great questions, so we move on now to the YouTube questions, to the Twitter questions. Starting with, at Iwagu91, your thoughts on the new Raw play-by-play announcer. I think Adon Verk, I don't know how you pronounce it exactly. I know Verk is his last name, but it's Adon Nan, I believe is how you spell his name. I think he did a better job this week. I was not impressed last week on the post-WrestleMania Raw. It's going to take time for him to get accustomed to it. But as other people have said, and I've seen this said on Twitter too, and I completely agree with it, he's not as good as Tom Phillips. Now, it's good to give the show a fresh coat of paint, but the problem with this show with Raw is not the commentary. Tom Phillips is not amazing. I'm not going to sit here and say that Tom Phillips was the best thing to ever happen to the Raw commentary team. I can't tell you the last time we had a great commentary team on Raw. They just don't really allow them to be great. The commentators aren't always going to be amazing. People will always go back to Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. Those days are unfortunately far behind us. Jerry Lawler's like 70, and JR is in AEW. And even he, a lot of people think, is polarizing. In WWE, I'm not a big fan of Byron Saxton. I think if they just cut Byron Saxton off the Raw commentary team, and it was Joe and it was Phillips, I think that would have been perfectly fine. This Vert guy, it sounds like he's a fan, but he's not as knowledgeable about the product as a guy like Phillips who's been there for a long time. And listen, I'm not saying you can't try something new, but to throw the guy out there in the deep end by immediately throwing him out there on the flagship show is a mistake. I'm not saying that he's bad. It sounded like he was calling a fucking golf game last week. He sounded a lot more animated this week. I think they probably told him to do that, which was good. He was probably nervous. It was his first day on the job. I get it. I don't know. He's a perfectly fine commentator, and this is really just, I guess, preference, because Tom Phillips it's not like this massive downgrade from Phillips to this guy Verk, okay? He's not that bad, but Phillips was just better, and Phillips wasn't even that great anyway, but Phillips at least was there. He knew the players, he knew the characters, and he's a guy that worked his way up. Very rarely, because I was talking to Alexis about this, and she was defending their idea to put him on the Raw commentary team. And listen, I don't think he's that bad, and I think he could be better in time. The problem is that they immediately just thrust him out there to fail. They set him up to succeed. That is the issue. I think with a guy like him, he could have been perfectly fine on a 205 Live, get accustomed to the characters, the style of the WWE commentary team, you know what I'm saying? Like the style and how WWE commentary works. Everyone on that show, I think, has had to work their way up. Byron Saxton has been there for like over a decade. He's been there forever. Phillips has been there for a very long time. He had to work his way up. Corey Graves worked his way up from NXT even. I mean, Samoa Joe was the only exception, but he's a former wrestler and he's also an amazing talker, so that didn't really matter. Vic Joseph, even, before he was thrust into the spotlight on Monday Night Raw, he was at least calling 205 Live and maybe NXT for a little while, probably just 205 Live and NXT UK. But at least he had experience. He was at least doing this for a little while. He was on the commentary team for at least a year or two before being put on the Raw commentary team. D.L. Madden was a different story. I mean, he wasn't the head, the lead play-by-play, but he didn't have any commentary experience at all. I think he called like 2 episodes of 205 Live before they put him on Raw. That was a problem, even though he also wasn't that bad. I just think you have to give these people that aren't really used to doing commentary more time and practice before you put them on Raw. Because if you put them on Raw and they're just being yelled at by Vince McMahon through their headset, it's just not going to work. So I think he was better this week. I don't think he's going to last. I really don't, and I hate to say that, but I hope he gets better. I hope he stays, but I don't know. I think to bump Tom Phillips for no reason, just to give it a sense that we're rehabbing the show with a new fresh coat of paint, it's not going to change that the creative on the show sucks. It's the least of their worries right now is the commentary team. It may have been maybe 5-10 years ago when we had like JBL, Cole, and Jerry Lawler. That commentary team was terrible. Lawler and Cole on the show, for as long as they were on the Raw commentary team, towards the end there, were awful. Was absolutely terrible. JBL did not help. I really enjoyed JBL when he first came back, but like when the Authority kind of came in storyline, JBL was unbearable to listen to. And even when he was on SmackDown, he was terrible to listen to too. So yeah, I just think with with these commentary teams, I think it was better before when we had Phillips and Joe and Saxton. I guess he's just kind of there. Joe's gone. They let him go, or he requested his release or whatever. And now we have Verk and Graves. I like Graves. I think Graves is good, to be honest with you. People will shit on Graves and don't like him, and I completely understand that. I like Corey Graves. I think he's good. He's better than Verk, so we'll give him some time. I think Verk can be better in time, and he has potential. I just don't understand the process of immediately putting him on Raw. Yeah, just because it's the night after WrestleMania and you want to switch things up, I don't think that's a good enough excuse, because to take something that isn't broken and try to fix it, I will never really understand the logic in doing that. At Iwagu91, again, if Hangman Adam Page is going to be the one to beat Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship, do you see him becoming the first person other than Kota Ibushi to kick out of the one-wing angel, or do you see said move remaining protected? That's a good question. They've been building it up so much since Omega showed up in AEW that I could see Paige being the one to kick out of the move. Because if it's not Paige, I'm not sure who else it is. And obviously you don't have to have anyone ever kick out of the move. But it can be like the 3D. The 3D I don't think was ever kicked out of for like a very long time. I think one person kicked out of it in ECW. And it wasn't Tajiri. I don't know if it was Marufuji or someone along those lines. It was someone like that. They kicked out of the move. Chris Sabin kicked out of the move, I think, in TNA, and then maybe one other person in the last couple of years. But definitely those two people. Definitely those two. Chris Sabin and then someone in ECW. That's over the course of like 15 years. So Omega, you can keep the move protected. I think that's totally fine. I think if there was anyone other than Ibushi, because Ibushi has kicked out of it, and you can play up that story. I think that's why they're playing up the story, to be honest with you. They're like, oh, no one kicks out of the move. And then Ibushi shows up and was like, I actually have. So they could do that. I think, if anything, it would be Ibushi. But if not Ibushi, then Paige, yeah. I think Paige can be the one to kick out of it, because it would make for a great near fall, and then Paige goes on to win the championship after he hits the buckshot lariat or whatever. So, yeah, I think that'd be an amazing moment. You got to save it for when it obviously matters most, and they're doing a great job of protecting it. So that's great. His third question, do you see Samoa Joe returning to Ring of Honor or Impact Wrestling? Full-time, no. Maybe to make a quick like pit stop or whatever. For example, like when he left TNA in 2015, before he went to NXT, I don't know if he went to Japan. I don't think he did, but he did stop real briefly in Ring of Honor. He actually might have been in NXT when he did that quick Ring of Honor show that summer, in the summer of 2015. I'm pretty sure at that point he was already in NXT, but he already committed to doing the dates in Ring of Honor. He didn't sign a full-on contract with them, but he went back for like one show. So I could see him maybe doing that. I think it'd be cool for him to have kind of a, not a farewell tour, but kind of going a tour to all these places that, were big earlier on in his career, Impact, Ring of Honor, before ultimately landing in Ring of Honor, or before ultimately landing in AEW. I think that's the ultimate destination for Samoa Joe. So maybe not sign full-on contracts. I like Impact and I like Ring of Honor. Honestly, I think they're two of the better, more consistent products every single week in wrestling right now. I enjoy both shows immensely. But the fact of the matter is that they're not big companies. They're not big enough platforms, I think, for a guy like Samoa Joe. I think there's a lot of people that could thrive in Ring of Honor or in Impact. I think Andrade, honestly, would be great in Ring of Honor. And yeah, he's a big star too, but Joe is just, he doesn't have a lot of time left, so I think he's got to utilize those years in a bigger platform, in my opinion. Andrade's got plenty of time left. He can go to Ring of Honor and Impact and New Japan and AEW and blah, blah, blah. Joe doesn't have a lot of time left. So maybe to make a quick, return match or a quick return before ultimately, in my opinion, landing in AEW. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who agree with that. At noob_n_co1991, their questions were, let's see here. What are your thoughts on the new Raw commentary and SmackDown commentary teams? I already talked about the Raw commentary teams. I think SmackDown, I didn't mention this before, but I think Pat McAfee is a natural. I mean, there's really no denying that. The guy's a great talker. He obviously is passionate about the product. He's been involved with the company for a few years now, in various roles. Wrestler, he's done commentary very briefly and, for one-offs and stuff like that on the main roster and in NXT. He's been a play-by-play, analyst and stuff like that. Not play-by-play, but he was doing, the panels, the pre-show panels and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think he's a great fit for SmackDown. It is weird that you would fire Joe. Maybe Joe just wanted to be back in the ring. He requested his release, and they let him go. That's probably what happened. I hope we find out at some point. I'm sure we will. But if it was merely a case of them just letting him go, that would be stupid when you still have Samoa Joe. But I'm sure there was more to that story than what meets the eye. But, no, I think McAfee's really good. Cole is just, he had a terrible weekend in WrestleMania. I think Cole can still be good. He can still be bearable. He's just been around for a long time. And Cole, I will never say, has been the greatest commentator ever. He definitely is not. And he is tough to listen to sometimes, especially with what they feed him. He's just the ultimate company guy. So he'll just spew out whatever they tell him. But I think with McAfee, he has a bit more freedom, which is cool. So yeah, so we'll see where it goes, and I think so far so good for McAfee. I think McAfee and Cole is a far better commentary team than Raw, and I think another reason for that not just isn't because of Virk, but another reason is because I think the two-man booths are just better. The two-man booths are just way better than the three-man booths. I think Byron on Raw is just completely pointless, to be honest with you. There's no reason for Byron to be on that show. Graves and Virk is perfectly fine as is. Byron Saxton has never and currently doesn't add anything to the show in being on commentary. So I think the SmackDown commentary team is just way better. Not to say that Cole is this amazing commentator, but having a guy like McAfee there, the positives outweigh the negatives. Over on Raw, you got a three-man booth, which is stupid. Yeah, it's a 3-hour show. Maybe that's why they do it, but it's still just not necessary in my opinion. So Saxton is pointless on the show. Virk is inexperienced. And Graves can be polarizing. So I don't know. I think the SmackDown commentary team I think is just way better. Noob, second question. What are your thoughts on the first trailer for Shang-Chi? Do you think it'll be a better martial arts movie that like Kung Fu Panda or the upcoming Mortal Kombat movie? I can't say if it's going to be a better martial arts movie than Kung... I not even remember seeing Kung Fu Panda like 15 years ago. I mean, that was an animated movie, so... I don't know if you're saying it's going to be better than that, or the Mortal Kombat movie, or if it's going to be like a better movie like Kung Fu Panda or Mortal Kombat. I'm not sure. I haven't seen Kung Fu Panda in a long time, and I probably am not going to watch the Mortal Kombat movie. I've never really played the games. I really don't care too much about it, so... I have seen the trailer for Shang-Chi. It looked really, really good. I have no doubt it'll be a great movie. I don't know anything about like the 10 Rings. I know a little bit about it from watching videos and stuff, but I don't know too much about that stuff. So even without knowing too much about it, I have enough faith in Marvel to do right by it, because almost every movie they've done has been excellent. So I have absolutely no doubt that it's going to be a great film. I look forward to it. I think it's out September 3rd. We got Black Widow before then, all the other Disney Plus shows. But yeah, the trailer was it was cool. It was cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they could do with the movie. But it's cool when they take unknown properties and make them known. You know what I'm saying? Not unknown properties, but like someone that I'm not overly familiar with. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, I had no idea what that was even about. And now it's my favorite property of Marvel's within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love the Guardians of the Galaxy, so... We'll see what they do with this movie. It looks really good from what I've seen so far. At the Average Grunt with a good question here. If you were to start a new promotion, what would be your ideal roster size? Specifically, what's the minimum amount of wrestlers/teams that you would need for each of your title divisions? World, mid-card, tag team, cruiserweight, women's, etc. I don't know if I would have a cruiserweight division when I'm first starting it. I don't really know if that's necessary. The main title picture, the mid-card, tag team, and women's, that's really all you need from the get-go. Cruiserweight's not necessary. I don't know. I mean, I can go off the video games and say, like in SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 General Manager mode, I can get by with 20 people. I think you would need maybe around 30 people, 30 to 40 people. I think that's what AEW started out with. I think 30 people is perfect. Maybe 30 women, maybe 30 men, and then 10 women. And that might be better. So maybe like 40 people, actually. 40 people, 10 women, at least 8, maybe 6 to 8 women. Probably around 10, I would say. Just to have a very healthy women's division. For the rest, I mean, tag teams, at least 4. You can always build upon that in time. When you're starting a promotion, you don't need 12 teams. You could, if you have the means to do so. I'm not a Tony Khan, so I think from the get-go, at least 4 to 5 teams. Main eventers, at least 5 to 6, 6 to 8 guys. Same thing with mid-card. So that would take you to what? Tag teams, what did I say? 5 teams. So that's 2 times 5. That's 10 people. Mid-card, 6 to 8 people. Let's say 10 for the mid-card. That's another 10. And then 10 for the world. So, and then 10 for the women. So yeah, like 10 for each, I think 10 people for each division makes about sense. It makes the most amount of sense. So I would say around 40 people. Maybe 50. I think 30 minimum, 40 ideally, 50 if you have the means to do so. That's probably what I would say. It depends, obviously, how much these people cost and who they are and how big of a star they are. If it's completely brand new people, then you can probably get away with signing more people if they don't have a name attached to them, But, I think having enough, tag teams and mid-card, main eventers, and women's wrestlers is is important because you want to accurately balance it out. You're not going to have, I don't think there's ever going to be a day. There could be. There very well could be. But currently, in the current climate of wrestling, you're not going to have the same amount of men on your roster that you do women. I think that'd be a great place to be at some point. I just don't know if we're ever going to get there. With the current way that wrestling is, I don't know if we're actually at that point. But maybe at some point we will. But you need a lot of women. You can't have like 4 women to use. You need more than just a handful because you want to have a lot of fresh matches, and over time you can sign more people and you can turn people face and heel and stuff like that. So, yeah, I would say 10 women, 4 or 5 tag teams, 10 mid-card, 10 main eventers. And then obviously, again, you can intersplice people, you can create new teams with those people, you can turn people face and heel. That'll get you through the first couple of years, I think. And then beyond that, you got to sign more people, but you can get to that when you get to that. And finally, from @E13A, the last question here, finishing up my first university semester on Thursday, any recommendations on stuff to watch, wrestling or otherwise? Well, first of all, Manuel, congratulations. That's awesome. That takes a lot of hard work, so congrats on that. Any recommendations on stuff to watch, wrestling or otherwise? I mean, there's so much wrestling out there, obviously, currently. You can really watch anything during the week and be entertained for the most part, aside from Raw. But Dynamite, obviously, you watch all the regular shows. If we're going back in like the backlogs here of like Peacock and the network and stuff like that, I've made my recommendations before. Money in the Bank 2011, Emmanuel knows all about that. He lives in Chicago, so that's one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. You can watch the old takeovers. Those are always great. I don't know, like matches and stuff like that, I'm not sure. I don't know. You could really, Peacock is just a godsend. I mean, the network is too, but we have to deal with Peacock, unfortunately. Watching the old Raws, and, I haven't caught the Broken Skull sessions yet, but I heard that was great. So if you haven't watched that, you can watch that. That's a great way to, after you're done with your work and just kind of get your mind off of shit, that's always a great way to kind of ease your mind and whatever. The Broken Skull sessions are amazing. The Chronicles are great. I've yet to watch the Edge one, but that I heard was really good. I'm not sure. There's just so much stuff out there. I have yet to watch the Most Wanted Treasure stuff, the A&E show. That debuted on Sunday. You can check that out. There was also the Stone Cold biography, that documentary on Sunday on A&E. Again, I have yet to watch it. Dark Side of the Ring comes back in a couple weeks. Catch up on the other episodes if you haven't seen them already. So there's a lot of stuff just right there. Non-wrestling stuff? I've been watching, obviously, if you guys follow the channel, you've been seeing I've been posting the reviews, but Falcon and the Winter Soldier has been a great show so far, and I really enjoyed WandaVision too. I thought that was an amazing show as well. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is just different. All these shows are different from one another so far, which is great. This one has been especially excellent, and I think the season finale is coming up on Friday, so you can check that out. But there's just a lot of stuff right now. There's a lot of stuff to watch. I would recommend any of that stuff. I'm not watching anything beyond that. I was watching Young Rock for a little while. I haven't caught up on it, but this is all wrestling-related stuff for the most part, aside from the Marvel stuff. But Young Rock is actually a really entertaining show. I would recommend checking that out. That's good for a good, quick laugh. If you don't want to sit down and watch like a 4-hour pay-per-view or anything wrestling-related, I mean, that is wrestling-related, but it's a show that anyone can enjoy. So you can check that out. What was the other show I was thinking of? Oh, Wipeout with John Cena. That just came back recently. Again, about an hour show. Enjoyable. Cena does a good job. The other woman, Nicole Byer, she's decent. It's more about like the Wipeouts themselves, but I've been enjoying that. I've been enjoying that since it was brought back a few weeks ago. And I'm not just saying that because I talked to John Cena a few weeks ago. It is a genuinely good show, I think. I've always enjoyed Wipeout. And then other than that, I have yet to catch up on it on Peacock, but I know all the episodes are there. Monk, Psych. I think Emmanuel, I know you're a Psych fan or at least aware of the show because I know we've talked about it before. I have actually yet to watch the sequel, the second Psych movie. It came out like a year ago. I have yet to watch it. I'm so ashamed of myself. But the actual shows are on Peacock, I'm pretty sure. Monk, I've always wanted to go back and rewatch. I haven't seen the show in like 15 years, but that show's amazing. So Monk and Psych and all the other shows I just mentioned, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Young Rock, Wipeout, Chronicle, Broken Skull Sessions, that's a lot of content right there. So those would be my recommendations for you for stuff to watch as you wind down your semester. And again, congrats. That takes a lot of hard work, so I'm proud of you, my man. But that's it, guys. That's it for episode 386 here today for hashtag AskGSM on April 21st, 2021. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. And, thank you for being patient during this turbulent time as far as like when content goes up, when it doesn't go up. A lot of stuff has been delayed, and it's just been a complete mess, but a lot of stuff going on right now. All good stuff. Be sure to check out the John Cena interview going up tomorrow here on the channel at 8 a.m. Eastern Time as of right now. So subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when that interview and all the other videos go up here on the channel. A lot of other interviews from the last week, including with Damian Priest, Intercontinental Champion Apollo Crews, CM Punk, Bianca Belair, Seth Rollins a few weeks ago, William Regal, Kyle O'Reilly, Big E. The list goes on and on and on. So check them all out right here. The Miz and Race as well. Check them all out right here on the channel. You're not going to want to miss out on subscribing for all the other daily content as well. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have a great one, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.